anybody that has a little bit of humanity on their hearts, they will support Palestinians, because it's what's happening right now there, the genocide.
It's really to show our support that the nation of Israel, they are not alone. We are here with them, side by side.
C'est pas la faute du peuple palestinien si le Hamas va prendre le pouvoir du pays. Quand un pays est abandonné et qu'il n'a pas le choix, ça va forcément être les gens qui... Ça va forcément se tourner vers les extrêmes, donc forcément ça va être soit l'extrême droite, soit l'extrême gauche, il y aura toujours des extrêmes.
Es ist nicht normal, dass in Berlin Molotow-Cocktails
man das Gefühl hat, das Leid der Menschen in Gaza kommt so ein bisschen mehr in den Fokus, habe ich das Gefühl. Gerade jetzt muss man nochmal erinnern, wer dieses Leid ausgelöst hat, nämlich die Hamas. Einseitig, ohne Beteiligung Israels, so wie es immer ist. Und wenn man wirklich solidarisch ist mit den Palästinensern im Moment, dann muss man gegen die Hamas sein.
Shame on all the governments, especially the Arab ones that have the power to do things, but they're keeping silent.
They're in the pocket of Israelis. They're in the back pocket of Israelis. They think they're there to support the Palestinians when in fact they're not doing anything to provide any support.
And we're screaming to anybody who will listen, let in the medical care and bring all 200 of these people home to their families.
The 23rd of October, 2 Israeli women were released by the Palestinian militant group Hamas and handed over to the Israeli military. Nurit Cooper, 79 years old, and Yocheved Livshitz, 85, were taken hostage along with their husbands from their kibbutz Nir Oz near the Gaza border on October 7th. Their husbands are still being held captive by Hamas. The release of the 2 women comes just 2 days after Hamas freed an American woman and her daughter. All four were among the over 200 people taken hostage by Hamas in the cross-border assault that killed more than 1,400 people. The release of the captives was achieved after mediation by Qatar and Egypt. As pro-Palestine and pro-Israel protests sweep the world, countries adjoining Israel are looking for ways to contain the situation in West Asia. Especially Egypt, where the Rafah border with Gaza has emerged as a focal point. Cooper and Lifshitz were transferred through the Rafah crossing from Gaza to Egypt. Thousands of Palestinians are waiting on the Gaza side of the border to enter Egypt. But Cairo has refused to take the Palestinian refugee influx. However, humanitarian deliveries through Rafah began on October 21st after much wrangling over the procedures to inspect the aid. Bombardments on the Gaza side of the border had left relief material stranded in Egypt. At the same time, Israel has called on its citizens to leave Egypt and Jordan immediately. It has advised them not to travel to other countries in the region amid the intensifying situation in Gaza. So will the Israel-Hamas war spiral into another West Asia war?
I think arguably it's already in a multi-front war. I think we have to say that the fighting along the Lebanese border, while smaller than that in and around Gaza, is still significant. So yes, Israel sees itself involved in a multi-front war. One of the reasons the United States sent carrier strike groups to the region was to prevent Iran either from Syria or from Iran proper in launching broader attacks. So at this point, I think it's less likely. I don't think we're looking at a broad regional war. But it's certainly already a multi-front war.
One is the fate of the hostages that Hamas holds. Two is the fate of civilians, Palestinian civilians in Gaza. Three is the threat of a broader Middle Eastern war. And four is, short of a broader Middle Eastern war, stepped up attacks on U.S. facilities and interests throughout the region, particularly in the Gulf, the Persian Gulf, and in Iraq, in Syria, in Lebanon.
The Israel-Hamas war has entered its third week. While Israel has amassed tanks and troops around the Gaza border to the south for a possible ground offensive, rocket fire and shelling incidents on its northern borders with Lebanon and Syria have also increased since the October 7th surprise Hamas attack. And then there's the fear of Yemen attacking Israel. Yemeni Prime Minister Ma'in Abdul Malik Saeed warned recently that Israeli ships in the Red Sea will be targeted if the IDF strikes on the Gaza Strip continue.
The crew of the guided missile destroyer USS Carney, operating in the northern Red Sea earlier today, shot down 3 land attack cruise missiles.
The Pentagon revealed that a U.S. destroyer in the Red Sea intercepted missiles fired from Yemen that were potentially aimed at Israel. Can Israel respond to these threats on different fronts?
Israel has the capacity, not an unlimited capacity, but the capacity to respond to threats not immediately on its border. Its Air Force, which is not overly taxed. I mean, it has a very large Air Force, and it's not taxed to its maximum capacity for the fighting in Gaza. They could respond. Now, depending on how many attacks from how many places, how many countries, they might quickly run out of that counterstrike capability, and so that must be a concern, of course.
But the biggest concern comes from here. Iran. Tehran has warned Tel Aviv that things will run out of control if Israel doesn't stop bombing Gaza. Iran is reportedly backing Hezbollah and Hamas financially as well as militarily. Over the past few days, it has been calling on allies and regional Arab nations to form a united front against Israel.
رژیم جعلی اسرائیل
Last week, Iranian Foreign Minister Amir Abdullahian warned Israel that new fronts might be opened against it unless it stops bombing Gaza. On the other side, there's the United States. President Joe Biden is once again facing the need to do a balancing act, demonstrating full-throated support for America's closest ally in West Asia, while also trying to press the Israelis to act with enough restraint to keep their war with Hamas from spiraling out of control.
We should have those hostages released, and then we can talk.
In a message to Hamas, Biden has made it clear to the militant group release the hostages it has taken in Israel before talking about a potential ceasefire. Israel's military spokesperson Daniel Hagari said his military is ready and determined for the next stage in the war and is only awaiting political instructions.
הלוחמים שלנו, לוחמי צה"ל, ערוכים בשטח, מוכנים ונחושים. הם ממשיכים להתאמן ליום פקודה. שבועות לחימה ארוכים לפנינו, נפעל בעיתוי המבצעי הנכון ביותר ועל פי הנחיות הדרג המדיני.
Let's see how the four main fronts will fare if an all-out war does break out. To help strengthen Israel's military capabilities, the United States has sent additional military assets to the region. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said the U.S. is concerned about potential escalation in the Middle East. Let's tell you about the main fronts of the war. On October 24th, Gaza authorities said over 700 Palestinians were killed in overnight strikes as Israel intensified its bombing campaign. Since the start of the war, the Israeli military conducted airstrikes targeting Hamas and its headquarters in the coastal enclave. Hamas operates out of this strip of Mediterranean coastal land bordered by Israel and Egypt. The strip has been cut off from the rest of the world since 2007, when Hamas seized control of the territory, prompting Israel and Egypt to impose a blockade on it. One of the main ways Hamas targets Israel is through this. A cost-effective method that targets long-distance strikes. In just 2 weeks, Hamas has fired 7,000 rockets towards Israel. In just 2 weeks, Hamas has fired 7,000 rockets towards Israel, according to the Israeli ministry. That's more than any of the previous 4 wars fought between Israel and Hamas since the militant group seized power in Gaza in 2007. But that's not all. Hamas has been trained to fight in a crowded urban setting and uses a vast tunnel network, often called the Gaza Metro. Destroying these tunnels will be the biggest challenge for Israel if it launches a ground offensive.
The Hamas forces are about 40,000 Hamas terrorists that are sitting in this underground tunnel network, which is estimated to be some 500 kilometers long. I mean, it's enormous. And so we want to deny them electricity and water and food to the tunnels so that the terrorists below become exhausted and they come aground, because obviously no matter how good our tactics are for fighting the tunnels on the ground, it's much better to get them above ground, because above ground is where Israel has a decisive advantage with our firepower.
Let's take you to the north of Israel. Hezbollah, meaning Party of God, was set up by Iran's Revolutionary Guards in 1982 to fight Israeli forces that had invaded Lebanon. It has remained a sworn enemy of Israel, which sees the group as the biggest threat at its borders. Ever since the Hamas attack on Israel on October 7th, Hezbollah has been exchanging fire with Israeli forces. marking the most serious escalation across the Lebanese-Israeli frontier since 2006, when Hezbollah and Israel fought a war. Over the years, the group has expanded its arsenal and fighters. The militant group backed by Iran, Hezbollah, has trained paramilitary groups in Syria and Iraq and inspired other forces such as Yemen's Iran-allied Houthis. The day after Israel declared war, Hezbollah launched dozens of rockets on Israeli positions to support Palestinian resistance. According to the Israel military, on October 23rd, Israeli aircraft struck 2 Hezbollah cells in Lebanon that were planning to launch anti-tank missiles and rockets towards Israel.
Hezbollah's capabilities are 10 times more powerful. Their missiles, their payloads, the precision-guided missiles that they have, all of these things are and the quality of their forces are much, much more powerful than Hamas's. So the threat from Lebanon is larger than the threat from Gaza.
Hezbollah's military power grew after it entrenched itself in Syria, another of Iran's allies in the region, to help President Bashar al-Assad fight mostly Sunni Muslim rebels. Hezbollah boasts of weapons that include precision rockets and drones and says it can hit all parts of Israel. In 2021, Hezbollah leader Syed Hassan Nasrallah said the group had 100,000 fighters. Several reports have suggested that Iran gives Hezbollah weapons and money, and the United States estimates Iran has sent hundreds of millions of dollars annually to Hezbollah in recent years. Moving now to Syria. Days after the October 7th Hamas surprise attack, it was reported that Israel targeted Damascus and Aleppo international airports in Syria, where Iran maintains a military presence. The strikes reportedly killed 2 workers. In addition, pro-Syrian regime forces have also been deployed to the border between Syria and Israel since the 9th of October. Remember, Iran's Revolutionary Guards were deployed to Syria during the civil war to help its ally Assad fight rebels. Tehran has always said Iranian forces are there in an advisory role at Syria's invitation. Iran-backed forces have been deployed across much of government-held Syria during the war, including at the Iraqi border and near the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights. Israel has mounted airstrikes targeting Iranian and Iran-backed forces. Just 3 days after the Hamas massacre, Yemen's Houthi leader said that if US forces intervened in the Gaza conflict directly, the group would respond by firing drones and missiles. Look at the distance between Yemen and Israel. Yemen and Israel, separated by Saudi Arabia, are about 1,600 kilometers apart at their nearest point. Then how is Yemen planning to strike Israel? Iran backs the Houthis, who have been battling a Saudi-led military alliance in Yemen since 2015 as part of its regional axis of resistance. Saudi Arabia and its allies accuse Iran of arming and training the Houthis. But the extent of the relationship is disputed, and Tehran has denied funneling weapons into Yemen. The military clout of the Houthis includes ballistic missiles that they have used against Saudi Arabia, including energy installations. They deny being Iranian proxies and claim they manufacture their own weapons. Yemeni Prime Minister Ma'in Abdul Malik Saeed has already given a warning to Israel and threatened to target their ships in the Red Sea if the IDF strikes on the Gaza Strip continue. On October 19th, a US Navy ship intercepted a number of missiles and drones launched from Yemen, reportedly towards Israel. Israeli Defense Forces, or IDF, has said it is prepared to protect its territory against potential attacks by the Iran-backed Houthis. One of the Houthis' new weapons is the Tufan missile. With a range of between 1,350 and 1,950 kilometers, the missile has the potential to put Israel within striking distance. The big question is, if an attack happens from all these corners, can Israel protect itself using its famed Iron Dome?
Iron Dome is just one system. The Israelis have multiple air defense systems to work at sort of low and immediate local levels, at medium levels, and at high levels, the THAAD and others. So I think Israel's got one of the most sophisticated air defense systems in the world. However, even Iron Dome, as good as it is not good at catching thousands or hundreds of rockets fired simultaneously.
The US military has stepped up efforts to protect its troops in West Asia. It has already sent warships and fighter aircraft to the region, including 2 aircraft carriers, to deter Iran and Iran-backed groups. At the same time, the White House has prepared evacuation plans for up to 600,000 Americans in Israel in the event of a full-scale ground war in the region. 86,000 Americans were believed to be in Lebanon when Hamas launched terror attacks on Israel on October 7th.
There's prudent planning, and then there's sort of the tactical level planning right before you execute. What we're talking about here is just prudent planning and thinking, but there's been no orders given, nobody pre-positioned to do it, no moving in that direction. But if it should get to that, my goodness, you'd want to make sure we were ready to do it and do it like that.
But what about those innocent people who will be drawn into a possible all-out war? What about those who are trapped in Gaza? When will the remaining Israeli hostages be brought back home? Can world leaders stop the escalation? Time is running out on all the fronts.